Timothy Harris. We're going to be discussing a safer, more secure future, and he is joined by key officials from within the Ministry of National Security. We will begin with an opening presentation by the Prime Minister, and then he will be followed by his special guests. This evening, he is joined by the National Security Advisor, retired Major Stuart Saunders. He's also joined by the Commissioner of Police, Hilroy Brandy, the Commander of the St. Kitts and Nevis Defense Force and Coast Guard, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Comrie, as well as the Chief Immigration Officer, Mercelyn Hughes. But before we hear from our special guests, we'll hear from the Prime Minister. Mr. Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Ms. Moderator. Let me begin by extending warm greetings to all who are tuning to tonight's edition of Leadership Matters. Tonight we focus on one of the most important, if not the paramount responsibility of any government, and that is the safety and security of its citizens and residents. It is my view that there is no greater duty of any leader than to keep the citizens and residents safe. It is the calm from which everything else flows. Security encompasses everything, be it our economic, social, or human development. Let me say from the onset that while the maintenance of peace, law and order is a primary responsibility of government, the issue of national security is everyone's collective responsibility. The vitality of safety and security in nation building is quite evident. If our Twin Island paradise is seen as unsafe, tourists won't come and investors won't invest. Locals also will be hesitant to fully participate in economic activity. More importantly, however, crime and criminality hinder our social interaction and human growth. Therefore, every citizen has a role to play because, like the COVID-19 pandemic, we are still fighting and we are all in this together. I wish to use this forum to implore all, citizens and residents alike, to let your conscience and civic duty guide you. We well remember the situation with crime and criminality when my government took office in February 2015. Given the frightening situation then, it is understandable that the safety and security of our people remain preeminent on our agenda. We immediately set about a systematic assessment of our resources and capabilities. My government, in consultation with our security experts and law enforcement officers, and in considering our needs for a safer, stronger future, develop immediate, medium, and long-term goals. The idea was to create, augment, and/or redistribute, where necessary, the capacities needed to arrest the situation that most would admit was out of control then. We adopted measurable goals and set about putting systems in place to achieve them. As part of that assessment, we identified several factors that hampered the proper and effective execution of duties where law enforcement was concerned. Deplorable conditions of police stations, particularly in Old Road, in Newcastle Nevis, in Sandy Point and St. Paul's, to name some, had reached an embarrassingly dangerous level of neglect. We ensured the consequential relocation of officers. Lack of equipment and proper support, training needs unfulfilled, all led to low morale in law enforcement and even lower levels of recruitment. We set about correcting these deficiencies by, inter alia, closing dilapidated police stations in Old Road and St. Paul's, and the construction of new modern facilities in Newcastle, Nevis, and in Sandy Point in St. Kitts. Indeed, the Sandy Point station can rightly be termed a national security and judicial complex, housing, as it will, the police, the customs, fire, immigration, and a magistrate's court. We increase respect for the police officers and displacement allowances to those working in Nevis but residing in St. Kitts. We initiated and facilitated better training for police officers to ensure quicker crime-solving methods. We insisted on training for officers with special aptitudes, acknowledging the importance of the proper recruitment, placement, and utilization of officers with specific skills in such areas as crime scene investigation, interview and interrogation, detection, etc. We encourage greater visibility of the police in our communities and provided them with equipment and technology to combat today's criminals, including, of course, closed-circuit television cameras and more patrol vehicles. Greater investment in forensic training and resource provision. Indeed, a modern forensic lab was built in Tabernacle, and it is today improving our crime detection. I want to commend our forensic team leader, Mrs. Latoya Lake Marshall, and her staff for their excellence. Continuous augmentation of patrols with the support from the Defense Force in surveillance operations. We fostered greater partnership between the public and private sectors. We facilitated and supported the Peace Initiative, thereby containing intergang rivalry, crime, and homicide. We passed the largest budgetary allocation for national security in the nation's history. For 2021, the budget for national security is $86.2 million. For 2020, the budget was $99 million. In keeping with our view that we are one nation, the support by my government for national security projects in Nevis has been at the highest level. It is important to note the earnest efforts of the Team Unity government to enhance security in Nevis, where in many cases it was lacking. Noteworthy among these efforts are: my government has contributed $2.4 million towards the construction and furnishing of the Newcastle Police Station, and we recently supplied furniture for the station from our central purchasing unit in Basseterre. In November 2019, with the support from the government of the Republic of China, an agreement was signed with Vivotech at about $5 million to provide cameras and other accessories, as well as the equipment and furniture for the expansion of the CCTV Command Center in Nevis. The St. Kitts and Nevis Defense Force, at the request of the Nevis Island Administration, has for over the last 4+ years maintained a physical presence on Nevis to support the work of the police and other law enforcement agencies there. The joint efforts have helped to contain and reduce major crimes on the island of Nevis. We have increased the number of law enforcement officers serving in Nevis. The Ministry of National Security currently has for consideration and approval estimate for repairs to stations in Gingerland, Cotton Ground, Butlers and Bath Barracks, and the division headquarters in Charlestown. The estimated cost of these projects is nearly $3 million. The Commissioner of Police has prioritized the facilities for action. My government continues to provide the necessary infrastructural and other support to the police in Nevis. Indeed, in our view, insecurity anywhere in the Federation is insecurity everywhere in the Federation. We are therefore committed to do the very best that we can with the resources available. Looking at where we are now to where we were then in February 2015, I believe that even the most reluctant will admit that our efforts, the efforts of Team Unity, have borne much fruit. Crime and criminality have been on a steady downward trend over the last few years, especially violent crimes. In 2017, we had reduced homicides to 23. As elements of the National Security Plan were being implemented, and in 2019, we recorded a further significant reduction in homicides from 23 to 13. A further reduction to 10 was recorded last year. While one homicide is one too many, this year we have had only 4 to date. We note that non-fatal shootings stand at 0 thus far, and gang activities are at their lowest levels in recent memory. We give God thanks and commend our citizens and residents for their discipline and compliance with the rule of law. And we extend our deepest appreciation to all our law enforcement agencies. Permit me to turn our attention to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, which in our view represents a real threat to national security, separate and apart from the obvious health considerations. We are faced with the threat of migration, both legal and illegal. We know that in times of hardship, it is those in the more desperate situations that often seek to relocate first, and that desperation can lead to temptation, even when persons are not ordinarily criminally minded. It is therefore critical that we monitor the movement into St. Kitts and Nevis, and even within our borders. In this regard, we have increased and strengthened regional and international cooperation for border security and intelligence sharing, in addition to revamping some of the physical and operational aspects of our immigration system. I am sure our Chief Immigration Officer and the Commander of the Defense Force will have more to say on border protection during the course of tonight's session. Taken as a whole, we have made significant strides towards the delivery of the stronger and safer future, which all of us, good citizens and residents alike, desire and deserve. Through our combined efforts and strategies, we have experienced in the Federation a welcome, sweeping reduction in major crimes, the most egregious of them being homicides. I commend the High Command and the hard-working rank and file of the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force and the officers and ranks of the Defense Force. Notwithstanding our outstanding successes to date, we must not become complacent, but remain prepared and vigilant. Even as we continue to shape our St. Kitts and Nevis into our Garden of Eden, let us bear in mind the following. The police must ensure that their presence is continually felt throughout the whole of our Federation. Our people must see the police as partners. Outreach to at-risk persons and communities must, of course, continue. We aim to be an inclusive society with everyone achieving their legitimate goals. Support for alternative pathways for our at-risk groups is of course critical. Support is equally required for youth group initiatives that reinforce positivity, civic-mindedness, and patriotism. Groups such as Explorers, Pathfinders, Cadet Corps must be encouraged and supported. These all form part of our national strategic plan for crime detection, reduction, and prevention. We must all do our part in the spirit of shared responsibility. In closing, I want to welcome our panelists, the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Hilroy Brandy, the Commander of our Defense Force, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Comrie, our Chief Immigration Officer, Mrs. Mercelyn Hughes, and our National Security Advisor, Major General Stuart Saunders. I thank all of you who are tuning to Leadership Matters, and I look forward to working with you in delivering the stronger and safer future which the people of St. Kitts and Nevis deserve. I could not end without saying thanks to the nigh 14,000 plus persons who so far have been vaccinated. Getting vaccinated is a very positive step in protecting yourself, your family, and indeed our beloved country. It is my view that vaccination is now a national imperative if we are to deliver more jobs, better quality of life, and more opportunities for all our citizens and residents. May God bless us all, and may God continue to guide and protect the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Thank you again for tuning in.
And thank you so much, Mr. Prime Minister. We'll now hear from the National Security Advisor in the Ministry of National Security, retired Major General Stuart Saunders.
Good night to everyone. Tonight I wish to update the nation on the development of the national security architecture and also give an update on what has happened since the national security strategy was put in place. I also wish to address the issue of the Alternative Lifestyle Pathway program and to give you also an update on that particular initiative which addresses the plight of our at-risk groups. Finally, I will speak briefly rather, on the importance of social interventions and inclusions. Following the approval of the National Security Strategy in 2020, the document was printed and made public in January of 2021. The National Security Strategy addresses the threats identified by the nation, the manner in which they will be dealt with, the tasks and responsibilities of all concerned. It is a whole of government and society approach to securing the nation and its interests. Implementation of the strategy is done through the conduct of organizational reviews. Ministries, departments, and agencies have been issued with their copies. They are required to commence their reviews in keeping with the directions provided in the strategy. This is an individual organization responsibility. However, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Security and myself are available throughout the process to assist where needed. The purpose of these organizational reviews is something that I think we need to be very much aware of. They are needed to ensure that organizations are capable of carrying out the tasks and responsibilities mandated, and also to ensure adequate planning for restructuring if necessary, taking on new or discarding old responsibilities, and obtaining resources where there might be shortfalls. The process allows the government, its ministries, departments, and agencies to plan adequately for the future. The review of the Ministry of National Security, its agencies and departments, was conducted on the 5th of March 2021. At least that's when it started. And the agencies and departments are presently continuing that particular process. Upon completion, a submission will be made to the Ministry, then the Cabinet, for their consideration and approval. The National Security Strategy is itself subject to a review every 3 or 5 years, or as is necessary, dependent upon the degree to which threats impact or are projected to impact the nation. The Alternative Lifestyle Pathway Program. This program of engagement began on the 13th of March 2019 as a result of a number of factors, namely surges in crime in September of 2018, resulting in the launch of Operations Enduring Safety and New Dawn by the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force. The positive impacts of those operations and the events of February 2019, which resulted in an unprecedented number of homicides in a 2-week period, was followed by requests being made to the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force by the warring factions at the time to assist them in resolving their issues. Quite a lot has happened since then. We have now rolled out Phase 3 of the Alternative Lifestyle and Pathway Program. This commenced in 2020, November 2020, with a more structured approach for its management and deliverables, all of which take place in a very dynamic environment. The opportunities provided by this rollout are basically as follows, or I'll give you a separate synopsis. Basically, the program has 4 established sectors of operation. St. Kitts has 3 and Nevis has 1. In St. Kitts we have the West, Central and East sectors, and in Nevis, as I said before, there is 1 sector. Each sector is assigned a field officer who sees to the day-to-day administration of the groups in that location. Project oversight management teams, or initial engagement teams as they were originally known, we have 1 each in St. Kitts and Nevis, and they continue to interface with the groups and ensure the implementation of and adherence to the program requirements. There is a review management board and management committee in place, which meets twice monthly to discuss issues and see to the program's delivery requirements. Apart from what I mentioned, we have started to embark on a program of establishing partnerships with the wider society. We have a partnership, we have started to engage the St. Christopher National Trust, the Ministry of Tourism, and the Ministry of Agriculture, to name a few. The agricultural engagement is particularly important from the perspective that we have had a large number of persons who have, from the Alternative Lifestyle Program, who have been displaying a very keen interest in that aspect. We have started to roll out, or not to roll out, we have started to plan and really begin the rolling out of a program known as the Life Skills Training and Exposure Program. This, at this particular moment in time, is being finalized. It has been a very long time in the making, right? But it has been impacted somewhat by the COVID-19 pandemic and the protocols by which we all have to observe for our own safety. Essentially, the program has 2 basic components, soft skills and hard skills. Soft skills entail teaching persons basically to write job applications, doing interviews, interpersonal relationships, communicating effectively, anger management, integrity, exercising responsibility, conflict resolution, stress management, financial and business education, values and attitudes, parental guidance, the law and society, and civic responsibilities. Hard skills, on the other hand, entails electrical and mechanical engineering, plumbing, culinary arts, drywall partitioning, stone cutting, appliance repairs, developing and managing entities, carpentry and joinery, masonry, computer skills, and some higher academic qualifications. The intention is to have successful participants receive the appropriate national certifications on completion of their respective programs. We intend, therefore, to continue engagements with the relevant institutions authorized to award certifications in order to make this a standard component of the opportunities offered by the program. Whilst we are doing this, we continue to be mindful of the victims of violence. They are also part of the at-risk groups in society. So we continue to compile a list of such persons, which will be passed to the relevant authorities for their appropriate actions. Since March 13th, 2019, we have come a long way. The Federation has continued to experience marked reductions in homicides by the gun and shootings. Citizens continue to enjoy the ability to move about freely with little or no fear of experiencing acts of extreme violence. Establishments continue to report a better environment in which to do business. The participants in the program have continued to take up opportunities offered, and some have since moved on, establishing their own businesses or completed apprenticeship programs. The program has therefore continued to add value through increased safety, security, and stability in the nation, while equipping our at-risk groups to become better citizens. As I said before, we have projections for greater social inclusion, and so we'll continue to engage at-risk groups in meaningful ways. We'll continue to engage the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, religious bodies, non-government organizations, volunteers, citizens in general, ministries, departments, and agencies to partner with us to help us to realize our goals and objectives and create and maintain safe, secure, and stable environments. We're also mindful of other aspects of the society. For argument's sake, we have a proposal before the Review Management Board that will be looking at how we can assist persons to be released from Her Majesty's prison after incarceration. This is aimed at reducing the stigma attached to incarceration and enhancing the individual's reorientation and reintegration into society. It also recognizes the need to reduce the incidence of recidivism, which is high at the moment. The proposal makes possible the nation's ability to maximize its potential. There are many highly qualified persons in Her Majesty's prison who are already considered rehabilitated and contributing to the nation's development in critical areas. They will need a second chance in life once released. Social interventions are critical aspects of the national security architecture. As an example, I highlight the Explorers Youth Clubs movement. It is the largest enrollment of youth and parents of any movement in the Federation. If I recall correctly, it has a membership of well over 1,200 persons at this particular moment in time, and it is still growing. The overall objective has continued to be one focused on improving the social environment by way of exposing participants to proper values and attitudes, addressing social deviances, developing and nurturing proper attributes, and providing the correct influences for our youth. It has an ideal partnership to accomplish its objectives, namely that of the Ministry of National Security, the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force, parents and children working together for a better future. The activities and contributions of other approved youth groups and organizations are complementary and therefore equally important and should be fully supported in moving forward to ensure that we do not fuel the cycle of crime and violence. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Major General Stuart Saunders, National Security Advisor in the Ministry of National Security. We will now hear from Commissioner of Police of the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force, Hilroy Brandy.
Good evening to our radio listeners and viewers. I am pleased to be in company of our distinguished Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Timothy Harris, and other guests on this evening program. And tonight's show, Leadership Matters, I will be providing an update on the statistics of our crime initiative in the Federation. Let me begin by commending our disciplinary forces for their hard work and commitment over the past 3 years and also into 2021. In 2018, we have seen 1,857 reported crimes against 1,348 in 2019. In 2020, we record 1,114 crimes for 2020, and to date, we have recorded 475 crimes for 2021. If I should give you a rundown of the most serious crimes that normally affect our citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis, that is homicide. In 2018, we record 23 homicides. And very difficult to have to correct my Prime Minister, but in 2019, we recorded 12 homicides. And in 2020, we recorded 10 homicides. To date, we have recorded 4 homicides for 2021. And I am pleased to say so far, out of the 4, 75% of those homicides has been detected. That is 3 out of 4. And I could assure the listening public and viewers that I'm looking by the end of next month that my violent crime unit will be able to solve the other homicide to give us 100% detection. I hope I'm not talking too early on that matter. However, there are still some positive on the crime fighting initiative from our organization. In terms of non-fatal shooting, I am pleased to record 100% over 2020. In 2020, at this time, we had 2 such shooting, non-fatal shooting. To date, we have recorded 0 fatal shooting. In terms of sexual offenses, last year, this time we had recorded 20. At this time, we have 14 sexual matters. And I must give commendation to our forensic department. Out of these 14, I can say 12 of these matters have been solved. And this is through the hard work in collecting the evidence, taking it to the lab at Tabernacle, do the necessary processing, and ship those information to England, to our counterpart, Selmark. As a result of that, so far in 2019, we submitted 20 cases for DNA, and with a healthy return and our DNA results from Selmark Inc. is roughly some 16 positive results out of the 20 and 4 negative. That's 80% of our DNA results in 2019. In 2020, we submitted 12 cases, and we have a positive of 8 and a negative of 4. That's 67%. In 2021, so far, we submitted 19. Out of the 19, we received 12 positive results, 3 pending, and 3 negative. So that gives us a 63% on our forensic department. Also, in our forensic department, we are very pleased with the work performed by our ballistic, Mr. Challenger. We were able to make several comparisons in terms of firearm, and also assist some of our member OEC states in doing comparative and tracing of firearm for our neighbor states like St. Lucia and Dominica, in identify firearms that have been committed. They are used to commit homicide in those countries. However, when we compare this period from last year, we are noticing an uptick in larceny, petty crimes, such as malicious damage. We have seen a concentrated effort in larcenies of supermarkets and vehicles. We have recognized that persons are using the opportunity to break into vehicles and steal personal effects. Via various platforms, we have sought to sensitize the general public on the proper way to secure their belongings. I must reiterate that the valuable items should not be left openly on your vehicles. These include iPads, tablets, purse, wallets, or even laptops. While no one has the right to steal your items, no one have the right, you always have the right to protect your property. So we are continuing our crime fighting initiative. One may ask why we are so successful. I want to commend the hard-working men and women from the Violent Crime Unit who go beyond the call of duty day and night to make sure that our citizens are safe. Also our task force and also the SSU to patrol our island on a daily basis. So we ask the general public to continue to support the police so we can keep St. Kitts and Nevis a much safer place for everyone to do business, dwell, and be happy in. I thank you. I'll wait for any question.
Thank you so much, Mr. Brandy, for that update. We'll now get an update from the commander of the St. Kitts and Nevis Defense Force, Lieutenant Colonel J. Anthony Comrie.
Mr. Moderator, other distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, and to the listening and viewing audience, a pleasant good evening. To convey a message of trust and confidence in the military, it is my pleasure as Commander of the Defense Force to bring to the public awareness the strategic issues such as the role of the military and offer a brief understanding of our military relation at the international, regional, and local level. It is important to state that taking part in this discussion will provide you as taxpayers and stakeholders a greater accountability from the military. Throughout tonight's discussion, I will focus on the Defense Force role in the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative, CBSI, the Regional Security System, the RSS, and the Ministry of National Security. I will highlight in particular the maritime collaboration with our major international partners in law enforcement, the training opportunities and support to our regional partners, predominantly from the infantry perspective, and conclude with the overall support to the police and other ministries and departments in the Federation. As Commander, I also must engage and tackle head-on the more complicated questions we face, including the security threat to our Federation and our current and future posture to effectively combat these dangers to our way of life. In other words, are we prepared to and capable of identifying these threats and adequately addressing them? It will be remiss of me not to mention the buzzword which has brought the world to attention, COVID-19. In this regard, I will look at some of the Defense Force successes in keeping the Federation safe during this period. From the infantry, apart from providing employment for our young men and women during the time of crisis, the force continued to provide support to the civil power, especially during the lockdown period. You would have seen soldiers alongside the police at supermarket providing security. We also work closely with the police on joint operations, which include patrols and VCPs. The force also provides security at quarantine sites on both islands and are scheduled to travel to St. Vincent shortly to fulfill our regional obligation as part of the RSS security force. The Defense Force has a presence on Nevis since May of 2015, and I must say the Nevisian public has welcomed the troops with open arms. P.S. Daniel in the Premier Ministry must be singled out for his unwavering support. From the maritime arm of the Defense Force, the Coast Guard, The Coast Guard had been very busy during the last year, especially during the lockdown period. It had conducted in excess of 2,000 hours of patrol, stopped and searched over 225 vessels, and made 3 interdictions, 2 of which was led to successful prosecution. During that period, the Coast Guard collaborated with the Ministry of Health and Nevis, as it was the only means of transport for COVID-19 sample from Nevis on a regular basis to catch the RSS flight to get to Trinidad for testing. The Coast Guard was involved in an incident that went viral, and I refer to the shark attack on the Ross University student. The unit was recognized by the university and was credited for saving the life of the patient due to its quick response and professionalism. The unit also received a card from the student expressing her gratitude. At present, there is a team of contractors sponsored by our international partners through the CBSI program. The team is at Coast Guard base carrying out work on 3 of our vessels. 1 have already been completed, and the 2 is expected to finish shortly. During the lockdown period, the unit reached out to the Department of Maritime Resources and was able to acquire a vessel to assist in executing its mandate. I would like to publicly thank Mr. Mark Williams for his kind cooperation. I'm happy to report that the Coast Guard will be the proud recipient of a utility vessel donated by our international partners to add to its fleet in time for the Christmas season. Our international partners is also assisting further in border security of our country. Preliminary work has commenced on the possibility of supplying and installing coastal radars around the Federation. In the meantime, the force is working closely with Customs and Exercise on the Unmanned Aerial System Program, the drone program. The Coast Guard headquarters is expected to commission in the next few months. The Defense Force has heard the cry of the boating public and fishing community on Nevis, and it is my intention as commander to place a Coast Guard vessel on that island in the not-too-distant future. These are exciting times for the men and women of the St. Kitts Nevis Defense Force. As one of the key partners in providing effective support to the civil power, as well as providing defense capability to the Federation, I hope that in addition to listening to the specific discussion, the public will constructively participate in a larger consideration beyond the adjournment of this discussion. Thank you, and I look forward for informative discussion.
And thank you, Lieutenant Colonel J. Anthony Comrie from the St. Kitts and Nevis Defense Force. We'll now hear from the head of the St. Kitts and the Nevis Immigration Department, Chief Immigration Officer Mercelyn Hughes, and she is the first Chief Immigration Officer that the Federation has had when the department was made a separate entity from the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force. We're happy to have her here, and we await her update.
Thank you, Jackie. I must say good evening to all who are tuned in to Leadership Matters. I will give an update on border security and the cooperation between various agencies as we're here represented tonight. 2020 presented many challenges for the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. On March 11, 2020, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a worldwide pandemic. Our borders officially closed on March 25, 2020, when the first 2 cases of COVID-19 were announced. During that time, only repatriation and cargo flights arrived and departed both airports in the Federation. With this new reality created the COVID-19 pandemic, the need to reduce congestions at air and seaports became of paramount importance globally, as the pandemic clearly demonstrated that border security and control would be first and foremost on any government's agenda. The National COVID-19 Task Force was created, and the Immigration Department is represented on this committee to further strengthen the policies and procedures at the borders in the fight against this pandemic. It was important to ensure that the border procedures encourage social distancing, and serious considerations were given to eliminate any direct contact to immigration officers with the processing of passengers at all ports to avoid the spread of the virus. and at the same time create efficient systems that transmit passenger data quickly and reduce congestion at the airport, the arrival ports. So what were these systems? Firstly, an online application form was created to eliminate the hard copy immigration and custom form by the government ICT department in collaboration with personnel from the Immigration, Health and Customs Department using the Barbados CARICOM Impacts model as our guide. This form has 3 components: immigration, health and customs. Every person desirous of entering the Federation by air or sea must complete and submit this form, and approval must be granted by the Ministry of National Security before boarding any carrier. This system helps in the pre-screening of passengers prior to arrival. It is expected that this form will be fully integrated into our border management system that is being taken care by the Canadian banknotes and who are the border management service providers. A total of 4,609 applications have been made so far. One application form can include multiple passengers. Secondly, a welcome center was constructed on the airport tarmac to accommodate approximately 160 passengers as a cool-down process ahead of being medically screened. Once the aircraft is landed, airline staff escort all passengers from the aircraft to the welcome center. This area is manned by customer service ambassadors from SCASPA. The first batch of 40 passengers would be marshaled into the terminal building in the pre-screening area to await medical screening. SCASPA service ambassadors would then usher 4 passengers at a time to the health screening officer. Once this medical screening process is completed, persons will then be directed to immigration. High-risk passengers would be taken to an isolated facility on the ramp. Other than family members traveling together, there should never be no more than 4 passengers in the immigration hall. October 31st, 2020 saw the official reopening of the borders with rigorous protocols in place. For the period October 31st, 2020 to May 8th, 2021, 6,598 persons arrived in the Federation, while 5,722 persons departed. A total of 1,728 aircrafts arrived and 1,724 departed. We had nationalities of passengers. They include citizens of the United States, of Canada, the UK, Australia, India, South Africa, China, and CARICOM and OECS countries. Currently, there's an advisory in place which states, and I quote, "Acting on the advice of the Federal Ministry of Health, the Government of St. Kitts and Nevis, through the National COVID-19 Task Force, hereby advises that the travel advisory originally issued on February 7th and extended twice thus far has been further extended for an additional 30 days and becomes effective as of May 4th. The new travel advisory comes as a result of the government's firm interest in continuing to protect our borders and the health and wellness of our citizens and residents in response to the 3 new variants of the COVID-19 virus that have originated in Brazil, the United Kingdom, South Africa, and is now expanded to include India. As we seek to protect our borders to ensure a stronger and safer federation, I wish to implore every citizen and or resident of the Federation to be watchful, to be the ears and the eyes of law enforcement, to keep watch over our porous borders. Illegal migration, which includes human smuggling and trafficking, is occurring throughout the world. St. Kitts and Nevis is no exception, especially since our stringent protocols caused us to keep down our number of confirmed COVID-19 cases. So we had 45 cases with 44 fully recovered and no deaths. That record is making our destination attractive to scrupulous and unscrupulous persons. As we continue to step up on our surveillance at the legal ports of entry, We opened offices at Marina Telka in New Guinea in the west of the island, Christophe Harbour on the southeast peninsula, and a fully functional office at Port Zante in the city centre. We have also introduced an enforcement unit within the department. The general public can expect to see immigration officers moving around the island in their newly acquired law enforcement uniforms. This unit was activated primarily to manage the large number of persons overstaying and persons working without the relevant approvals. We are therefore encouraging persons who fit these profiles to visit the Ministry of National Security and have their status regularized as soon as possible. I mentioned earlier the online application form, which is an excellent screening and profiling tool for our department. Before approval can be given by the Immigration Department, behind-the-scene interviews take place with prospective travelers as soon as the form is submitted. It can take a day, it can come in a day early, weeks or months in advance of travel, as to the purpose of visit, and in some instances provide supporting documents, etc. We have discovered persons making false declarations on their forms by claiming to visit on vacation, but actually have jobs lined up. A warning to potential employers of these persons is that it is an offense to employ any non-national without a work permit, which must be applied for, while the prospective employee is outside the Federation and the employer having fulfilled their local obligations as outlined in the Immigration Act number 602 of 2009, which was revised in December 31st, 2017. The security forces collaborate in our fight against crime and criminal activities. The Immigration Department is an added arm of the security forces in the fight against these environmental threats, which could create serious national security risk and tarnish the integrity of our beloved and beautiful country. An initiative of the National Security Advisor called Heads of Agencies Security Coordination Conference brings us together fortnightly to report on our various departments and challenges facing each entity. 2 weeks ago, the Chiefs of Immigration and the Comptroller of Customs held our annual meeting virtually to discuss trends on illegal and environmental migration taking place around the region, among other concerns. We also have a very active CARICOM Heads of Border Security chat and an OECS Chiefs of Immigration chat, where information is shared in real time across the region. The Joint Regional Coordinating Center and the Regional Intelligence Fusion Center, along with our international partners, Interpol, U.S. Customs and Border Control, Canadian Border Control, and others share in our intelligence gathering and analysis capabilities. Keeping our country and borders safe is a collaborative and coordinated activity. None of us can go it alone. I will close using a line from the Prime Minister's opening remark. The issue of national security is everyone's responsibility. It is our collective responsibility at all times. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Ms. Hughes. We've heard several updates from several heads of agencies, and I know all of those areas are areas of particular interest to our listeners. And we've gotten to that part of the program where we're very eager to hear from you. We're going to take a break first, but let me share with you the numbers in case you'd like to call in or send a WhatsApp message. If you'd like to call, and if you have a question, query, or concern, maybe even a suggestion for our panelists, you may participate in the program by dialing 466-2666, 662-8674, or 767-4765. We have an international line, and that number is 1-239-645-4500, and those numbers are listed at the bottom of your screen for your convenience. Not listed on your screen is the WhatsApp number, and this evening we'll be using one WhatsApp number for both voice notes and messages, so you can send your voice notes or messages to 660-7168. That's 660-7168. 68. I'll try to repeat those numbers before we bring the program to a close. So we're going to take a quick break now. Don't touch that dial, and we'll be right back.
It's only just a phase. Once we're vaccinated, and everybody gonna be safe. Everybody gonna be safe. One kind, one people. We are roll up to roll out. Cause no man's alone. Do what's right. Cause I love you. Brother, my sister. And we're in this together. My sister, my brother. I don't wanna lose you. I love you too much. I think it's better for us, yeah. It's better for us, yeah. I don't wanna lose you. I love you too much, yeah. It's better for us. Tell your mommy to let it roll out.
Bless up. Dejo here, and I'm doing my part in the fight against COVID-19 by following all safety protocols and, most importantly, rolling up my sleeve for the vaccine. So I'm encouraging you to do the same, because that's our best shot of protecting ourselves, our family, and our friends. So don't wait, vaccinate. Let's roll up to roll out.
St. Kitts and Nevis, let's roll up to roll out. It's our best shot.
The handing over of a generous donation of 20,000 doses of the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine.
It was a kind donation, as India understands that it is important for us to be able to ensure that the entire world is free of COVID-19, and the only way we can do that is through vaccination.
We welcome these additional doses because it would help us to provide a significant coverage, a greater percentage of our population in terms of vaccination against this virus.
And just to note that St. Kitts and Nevis is also paying forward, and we are going to assist the government and people of Grenada by donating 2,000 of those 20,000 to the people of Grenada. And so once again, we just want to thank the government of India, and remember, don't wait, vaccinate.
I will take the vaccine because building defenses against COVID-19 is a team effort, and we are all a key part of that defense.
I definitely will be taking the vaccine when it's my turn.
I will be taking the vaccine as it is an important tool in the fight against the pandemic.
It is important for me to vaccinate to ensure that if I do become infected with the disease, it can prevent hospitalization. In addition, it also helps with herd immunity.
I will take the vaccine to protect myself, my loved ones, my clients, my co-workers, my community.
St. Kitts and Nevis, why do we need to vaccinate? Kenisha? So we can jab COVID-19 away.
You know, it's me, Mr. H.E., and I'm here with one message. Roll up to roll out. We all know how difficult things have been during this COVID-19 pandemic. While we continue to wash our hands, wear a face mask, and practice social distancing, how about we take it one step further and get vaccinated? Call the nearest health center to find out if you are eligible to be vaccinated. Or you can contact the Ministry of Health at any one of these numbers down below. Don't be discouraged by the negativity. We all have a role to play in protecting this federation. So, St. Kitts and Nevis, let's roll up to roll out.
Welcome back to Leadership Matters, which is hosted weekly by the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris. My name is Jacqueline Bryan, and I'm your host this evening. It's a pleasure to be here. We're at the part of the program where we're going to take your calls and messages, but I'd like to let you know that we're being listened to and viewed on several platforms. Leadership Matters is aired live on ZIZ Radio, Freedom FM, Vaughan Radio, Win FM, and Sugar City FM. It is also streamed live on the Facebook pages of and YouTube channels of ZIZ and the St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service, also known as SKNIS. The program is made available as well on Spotify and Apple and Google Podcasts, so quite a number of options for you to listen live, view live, and then listen and view again and again. We are going to go directly to the phone lines now until we have some callers on hold. So we'll take our first call for this evening. Welcome to Leadership Matters. You're live.
Good night.
Hi.
And Leadership really matters. Want to say good night to our Prime Minister for putting on yet again another Leadership Matters this Tuesday. And I get right into the question that I posted. Could you give examples of crime solved by the forensic lab? Because I've heard a lot about this forensic lab, and that is what the people want to hear. So once again, give examples of crime solved by the forensic lab. Which country do we have the best relationship when it comes to fighting crime? That is very interesting to me. I've heard a lot of comparisons, so I want to hear the answer for this question. We move on. Any update on the different force officers traveling to St. Vincent and the Grenadines? When are they scheduled to depart? Will they be vaccinated prior to departure? Very important question. From which country the majority of persons coming to our federation are from, since the border has been reopened since October of last year? And I will repeat it. From which country is the majority of people, visitors, comes from to our federation since our border have been reopened since last year of October? And Ms. Bryan, I know this question might be a little directed to you as a master concerned. What protection does media and journalism have with here in St. Kitts and Nevis? Because I did some history, and I've known some cases where some persons might have applied, for protection and was denied. So I'm wondering, what protection, again, do media and journalism have here in St. Kitts? In closing, Prime Minister, thanks for choosing this panel. It is well timely. It's all about security, and I must commend you on the job you are doing in terms of keeping St. Kitts safe. You are moved a little away from the COVID-19, and we are now looking into our security force because our borders is going to be reopened very soon. And with that said, our country has to be safe because our guests has to be safe. And with these numbers that I'm hearing in this opening remarks, I am very pleased to see coming this summer that we have more guests who will feel comfortable by your hands of Dr. Timothy Harris. This is Bucky Garrett, and Bucky has got it. Over now.
Thank you so much for your contribution to the program. We'll take another call. Welcome to Leadership Matters. You're live.
Yes, good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night, Honorable Timothy Harris. Good night to your panel. Yeah, everybody know this, Granny. Well, I had two nice questions for the commissioner. But apparently y'all elaborate on one that the question was, how does the crime rate look in St. over the past 6 years compared to the rest years then beyond? And is the peace program more or less a good idea? Prime Minister Harris, I have a question for you now. And I also would want the general public to listen carefully to your answer. Listening a lot of radio stations and a lot of people, opposition, people like, who feel like they could use the radio by paying for a spot and so. My question to you, Honorable Timothy Harris, if you was in opposition, would you encourage the people of St. Kitts and Nevis not to take the vaccine to help the country move forward? That is my question to you. And to the general public out there, right, who ain't got to take the vaccine the last time when I went, please note that tomorrow, yes, I have to take my second shot to see I by the clinic. And who ain't do that one yet, if y'all want to come and just watch me take mine and I'll take I one after, please do so. Yeah, let me help St. Kitts and Nevis move forward. Good night to the panel. Enjoy y'all night.
Thank you so much, caller, for your contribution and your words of encouragement to others. We'll take another call. Welcome to Leadership Matters.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Yes, first I want to say good evening and happy Mother's Day to those two beautiful women, ladies on the panel. And then I want to find out from all the security forces up there how much police vaccinated, how much people in immigration vaccinated, how much in the army vaccination, how much vaccinated, how much in national security vaccinated, and to you, the Prime Minister, how much in your affairs that vaccinated. And first, I want to thank all of you who are there. I think you all doing a good job. But what you all need, it goes first for Miss Hughes. You need just some informers to help you with your work. You cannot depend on the new people you hiring who never know nothing about Newtown, who ain't know nothing about Irishtown. They just get a job for job's sake. You understand me? You have to get people in the crack to weed out the bad ones and them. People who on the road to know who come yesterday and who where they live and so on, and they could unite to you. Now, with me now, I have a contact in the police department who I just call if I see something wrong. So you have to set up something like that, Miss Hughes. And the army, I can talk about the good jobs they are doing. So I will not criticize them for nothing. But Prime Minister, you continue to do what you think is best for this country. And your leadership is going. Man gone, man yeah. So when the time comes around for the election, we're going to know who Peter for Paul. Good night to all of you. God bless all of you. And bless the Federation.
Thank you so much, caller, for your contribution. We'll take another call. Welcome to Leadership Matters. You're live.
Yeah, good evening. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. And yourself?
Yeah, pretty good. I just wanted to call in tonight and make a small contribution. I just wanted to state clearly to the Prime Minister that, I think that he's done a great job, and the people of St. Kitts and Nevis have to be thankful for the leadership of Team Unity. My first question is directly to the Prime Minister. There have been persons that's been propagating that the Prime Minister is trying to, this is concerning the vaccine. Persons have been propagating that the Prime Minister is trying to lead with a big stick approach. Is there any way we can have the Prime Minister state clearly tonight to the whole Federation the approach of his government in terms of the vaccine? Because I've been hearing a lot of people saying on the radio stations that he's trying to lead with that big stick approach. So can he state clearly for the nation to hear what is the approach of his administration? And I have two other minor questions. One, sometime back, the Prime Minister stated that they was going to try to clean up the judicial system. Seeing that you guys are talking about crime tonight, what steps has been taken towards cleaning up that backlog and that judicial system there in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and also the abandoned houses situation inside Bastille. I don't know exactly where those abandoned houses are, but, you know, an initiative was started with trying to clean up the abandoned houses. And that's those 3 points I wanted to get across tonight.
Thank you so much for your contribution. We'll take another call. Welcome to Leadership Matters. You're live.
My bigger house in town, you want to clean up. Oh, Prime Minister, I forget to say this here. When I don't take my vaccine tomorrow, right, and that big car there, that big thing there, for instance, I think just now the port and say, you can't come in the port unless you're vaccinated. You can't. I think I hear something about that. But you don't think it's a good idea, like somebody bring it to my attention yesterday, like how the electoral office ain't really doing nothing. You ain't think it's a good idea, so we could get some good card from there for who don't take the vaccine, so we could walk with it. Because we can't walk around with that big thing there that it look like when the children they used to go click and they get them paper there, because that card is big. So I think, I mean, getting a nice, good, decent care to say you don't take your vaccine, and so I think that will be. Because right now, remember, we are on the fight to fight corona, you know. Right. And a nice caller just called in and he was saying something about, you know, moving forward to take the vaccine. I'll be hearing here what Gaston Brown saying Antigua. But anyway, I enjoy Irish Cyanide.
Thank you so much, caller. We'll pause here to respond to the calls that we have so far. We have quite a number of questions to address. I don't know if you'd like to start with the last first, or if we should go from the beginning. We'll go from the top. We have a question asking about examples of crimes solved by the forensic lab. Quite a number of mentions was made to the forensic lab of the police force. Mr. Commissioner?
Yes, good evening once again. I want to say in every aspect of the crime fighting initiative, that the forensic department assists, from the homicide to the simplest offense with larceny. Our forensic department visit every crime scene and assisted in the solving of several of our crimes.
Which country do we have the best relationship with when it comes to crime fighting? Was the next question.
I think one of the best countries that we have that relationship with outside of the Caribbean is the United States.
Commander, an update on the soldiers who should be traveling to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, please, and will they be required to be vaccinated?
I want to thank the caller for his question, and the Defense Force soldiers will be ready to move on the weekend of the 29th of this month, and I am proud to say that all of them will be fully vaccinated.
Ms. Hughes, we have a question asking, from which countries have we had the most visitors since the borders reopened?
Easy, the United States of America. I think maybe about 75% of the persons are coming in from the U.S., of our visitors.
Mr. Commissioner, we have a question about what protection does media personnel have in terms, well, that was the question really, what protection is available for media practitioners?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay, just to, well, if the caller could call back and provide some clarity. I know that I have not received any requests for any kind of protection or questions in that regard. So if the caller could call back and provide some clarity on the question, we'd be more than happy to put it to the relevant person. We also have a question for you, Mr. Commissioner, about how does the crime rate look over the past 6 years? I don't know if you'd like to make reference to it again. You did in your opening statement. How does the crime rate look over the past 6 years compared with previous years? And is the peace program a good idea?
In terms of the crime rate, that is take us as back as 2015. We are seeing the crime rate decreasing every year from 2015. We see our numbers going down and down and down. As 2015, I think we had registered well over 30 odd murders. And from since that, we've never gone back to the 30 numbers. We are in 23, 24, and now the last 3 years, we have registered 12, 10, and now we are in 4 so far for the year. So we are seeing our crime rate decreasing as we put the necessary investigative assistance in place to help to fight crime, such as our lab, our compound microscope, our CCTV, our Peace Initiative, our Explorers Club. All these assisted in reducing the crime level in St. Kitts and Nevis.
And do you think the peace program is a good idea?
Program is a very good idea because it will find other alternative paths for our young men who was using the guns on themselves and give them a chance to remain alive in our federation or rather to find themselves in prison, incarcerated. So I think it's a very good thing the Peace Initiative is presently doing, and I'm happy to be a part of it, also with my other members of my High Command.
Major General Saunders, as someone integrally involved with the peace program, are you able to add to that?
I agree wholeheartedly with the Commissioner, and what I would add is that any state in a nation where you have homicides being constantly reduced over years, I think is always a good sign and a good indicator of how things are going and how good a program is operating. And so far, we have not had any problems, really. We have had a number of challenges, yes, but no real problems, and we continue to have improving trends, year in, year out.
Are you able to provide any information with regards to the question about what protection exists for media practitioners?
Well, I don't know of any media practitioner who has indicated the need for protection whilst operating in the Federation. And certainly, if the Commissioner can't speak to that, that means that we have never had an application as such. So I think there's need for the caller to come back and give more specifics as to exactly what he's speaking about.
Directly for the Prime Minister, putting a situation to you, asking if you were in opposition, would you encourage persons to not take the vaccine?
When the COVID-19 pandemic struck about a year ago, it was very clear that all we had were non-pharmaceutical measures. We had to wear our masks, we had to maintain social and physical distance, we had to do frequent hand hygiene. And the health advice was that it would become necessary and essential until the vaccine arrived. So essential those things were then that we had to legislate them in the COVID bill and in other regulations, SROs, that were issued. So for a full year, we knew that the quote-unquote silver bullet in helping us to contain and reverse the significant dislocation in the economies, in societies, as a result of COVID-19 would only come when a safe and reliable vaccine had been found. We are fortunate today, as we speak, that there are perhaps about 5 WHO, that is World Health Organization, sanction, approve vaccines which are available. One such vaccine approved by the World Health Organization, which is the main and most important international body giving advice and support regarding health matters, public health matters in particular, and that is the AstraZeneca vaccine. Indeed, the World Health Organization, I'm advised, has approved 3 versions of the AstraZeneca vaccine. And around the world, the AstraZeneca vaccine is being used by the largest number of countries at this moment in time. So it is effective, and it certainly, in the context of our Caribbean region, has worked. In our Caribbean, no one has died from using it. And in our Caribbean, we have not had any significant negative impact being reported as a consequence of the use of the AstraZeneca vaccine. I give that background to say that the answer must be very clear to any national leader. We are dealing with a deadly virus that has killed around the world millions of people. And life, of course, must always come first. It is in that context that I, since then and until now, remain consistent in encouraging and urging everyone to do the right thing. The right thing must be to follow the science. Vaccines have been around for the last 200 years, and everywhere they have been introduced, they have contained deadly viruses and diseases and allow people to go on to live fulfilling lives. Growing up, going to school here, we had our vaccines. We were vaccinated against smallpox, measles, and mumps. In fact, in St. Kitts and Nevis right now, we have a list of about 14 vaccinations dealing with a variety of diseases that confront us as human beings. The AstraZeneca vaccine is one on the list. And so I will always encourage persons to get vaccinated. And in the context of COVID-19, all over the world now, everyone is doing that. In Canada, people are wishing that their names were called to get the vaccine. In the United States of America, the president has launched the most massive vaccination program in history to attempt to get people to live better lives. In the UK, the story is the same. Every country, whether it is a democracy or an authoritarian state, has embarked upon a more significant mass vaccination program, the largest in history now, where over 1 billion persons as we speak have already been vaccinated. And so there can be no rational reason, unless there's a health one, unless a person has some health condition or perhaps on religious ground, on which one should deny themselves the use of the vaccine. So if I were in a position, I would encourage all my supporters, I want them to be healthy and well, to deal with the political agenda. I would urge them to go get vaccinated. As Prime Minister, I'll certainly do the same and have been doing the same in the context of the lived reality. What we are seeing played out in St. Kitts and Nevis is really old-style politics. It's the Douglas, old Labour politics that being played out, where even as a medical practitioner, Dr. Denzel Douglas has done a disservice to himself, to the country, and to the years of outstanding leadership which the Labour Party had on the Bratcher, on the Southwell, on the Limor, in attempting to find a political space that doesn't deny the rationality of the national agenda. What greater national imperative could there be than to keep our people safe? St. Martin, people are dying. In Barbados, people are dying. In St. Lucia, people are dying. in Trinidad and Tobago, which has been on lockdown for almost a full year, they now have an outbreak of the virus. In Barbados, a secondary school with 1,200 persons had to be closed. All over the world, the most significant challenge is the COVID-19 pandemic. And there's only one real solution. The quicker you get to herd immunity, the better it is for everyone. The risk level is reduced. And so, save for the old-style politics of the old Labour leader, there can be no justification for any sensible politician to not want to encourage others to be vaccinated. In fact, those who are sensible enough, like Jeffrey Hanley, and the opposition has moved forward and has gotten himself vaccinated, and they too of the rollout. So there is a crisis of confidence and a crisis of leadership within the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party, and we will see how that plays. There's only one other note, that the Labour Party under Douglas has always been obstructionist. In the lead-up to the general elections, they try every tactic to deny the government the ability to keep the people safe. Douglas wanted to have a march and a party and a jam session in St. Paul's. Almost succeeded in creating, as it were, a potential spread of the virus. And the efforts that they did everywhere, they even went to court to argue against the significant efforts, which were not unique to St. Kitts and Nevis, that were taken by the government to keep the people of St. Kitts and Nevis safe. The most fundamental responsibility of any government is to keep its citizens and residents safe. And we have been able to do so. They went to court on a number of matters related to the pandemic. They lost every one of them badly. And they will continue to lose because we won the election in part because people saw effective leadership. People saw responsible leadership. People were in tune and in agreement with every policy, including the closure of our borders for our protection, and they voted for that. And that is why I say that Dr. Douglas is doing a disservice to himself in the twilight of his political career. He's doing a disservice to his profession in attempting his efforts to discourage and undermine the results of an effective vaccination rollout. So I gave perhaps a long answer to a short question because it's important for context. It's important for people to understand what the science says, and what the science says in St. Kitts and Nevis is what it's saying all over the world. And that is why I draw the comparison and the commonality of the response. Whether you are in Cuba, or you're in America, or you're in Europe, or you're in Russia, every government and everybody is urging, get vaccinated for yourself first, to protect your loved ones, to protect your children under 18 who can't be vaccinated, like we were in school against the measles and smallpox. Protect all and everyone. And so, by and large, the country will deal with this matter, as every matter that finds itself in the political theater is being dealt with at the appropriate moment in time. But we are proud of our response. We are proud of the advice given so consistently by our health experts. St. Kitts and Nevis stands alone in terms of our success. We stand alone as perhaps being the only country started with a 14-day quarantine period and maintained it against incredible odds. When others were saying they were going to do 3 days, you're going to quarantine at home and quarantine for a few days, St. Kitts and Nevis said no. And it has proven us well. The results are there to be seen.
Thank you so much for that. We're going to go back to the phone lines now until we have some callers on hold, and we definitely want to hear from you, so you take priority right now. We'll take another call. Welcome to Leadership Matters. You're live.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
This question, good night to you and to your panel. This question goes to the Prime Minister. Almost 2 months now, I called and asked about the step workers. And he mentioned in next month or two that probably everything will be finalized. And almost a year now, because July 1st can make a year. So I would like him to give us an update on the step workers and how things is going.
Certainly. We take another call. Welcome to Leadership Matters.
Hello. Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Yes, my name is Lavardo Cummings. I would like to ask the Prime Minister a question. Not a question, but a statement. I believe that the whole restrictions and if you don't take the vaccine and all this, I believe it is medical tyranny and it is unconstitutional. No one should be forced to take a vaccine because this is really a vaccine, not a vaccine. And some may scoff and say that people are conspiracy theorists, but they are not conspiracy theorists. When you have so many questions that linger behind this vaccine, until those questions are being answered, then you can say to people, then people will be more susceptible to taking the vaccine. But as long as these questions still linger, why, if I take the vaccine and something goes wrong, medically wrong, I can't sue anybody. I can't. Who is the charge or the responsibility going to be ascribed to? I will have to take on that. So my family will have to take that on, and there is no way in which that my family can sue the government or anything because it has been said from the outset that nobody wants to take the vaccine. Anything happens to you, there's no compensation, and this whole medical tyranny, which I call it, it is unconstitutional. It is unconstitutional. So until those tough questions can be answered, then of course you can say that all right, people would go and take the vaccine. But when you put all these kind of pressures and all these, if you don't take the vaccine, you're going to this, you can't get that, and you limit the commodity that people, the day-to-day commodities that people have to access. It is unconstitutional and it is wrong, and it's against the international human rights.
And any access to any commodity in St. Kitts and Nevis for the record. And there's no medical tyranny here. We have made it very clear that we encourage everyone to take the vaccine. We have not mandated. So there's no policy that says that you have to, but we urge everyone to do the right thing. And indeed, there are several categories of workers in the country who are what you will call high risk, and they therefore have to consider that in terms of their own decision making. So that is where that is, and that matter.
Well, I guess in responding to that matter, you can also speak to the caller who asked about your administration's approach to encouraging persons to take the vaccine.
Well, I think our approach really has been a most enlightened one. And what we are doing here, though perhaps better, is no different in substance to what every responsible government is doing, encouraging the people to understand the science. And there will always be questions. We sing the song, there are more questions than answers. But are you going to wait for how long to get all the answers in the face of an overwhelming abundance of evidence that says to you that the vaccines are safe? Some persons say they want to know what is in it. Do you want to know what is in the aspirin too? You know, we get a prescription and we write and we can't read what it is. We go to the pharmacy, we take our prescription, we use it. Do we ask what is in it? We don't know. There has to be an element of trust in relation to these matters. I trust my doctor to give me good advice. If I have doubt, I seek a second opinion. and so on and so on. So that basically is a framework within which it is a new pandemic, and we are learning more about it day by day. That is why it's a dynamic situation. But you must also look at what is the consequence if you contract it. What is the consequence? And we know what the ultimate consequence will be. It is death. That is what they are fighting now in Trinidad and Tobago. That is what they are fighting now in Jamaica. This is what now they are fighting in India. This is what created the lockdown in the United Kingdom. So I think we know enough. We know enough to know what the right decision is. And so we could talk about these things, which are important to say yes. But we know enough, and everyone must make that judgment call. We do encourage those who have questions to seek professional advice of their personal physician and then be guided accordingly. And of course, we have always said from day one, if you have a particular health condition, kindly check with your doctor before you attempt to take the vaccine. So there is nothing about the approach here. There is urging, there is encouragement, there is no mandatory policy with respect to it. Of course, as a government, having regard to the consequence of this, we have to look at every and all options. Looking at them doesn't cause them to happen, but we have to consider every option. In my way of governing the country, I don't usually take anything off the books because we learn as we go. So for example, we're talking about security. I've said to the High Command in prior meeting when we got in, when the homicides was outrageously alarming. Listen, we have to try everything. When persons come with idea, you can't just abandon it and not look into it. You examine it. It may not be workable at a particular moment in time and given certain situation in which you find yourself, but you don't just cavalier discard it. And so there are different approaches, really, and different options may come. We consider them and we make a determination what is good and proper in the particular circumstances. And in the same way, with respect to this pandemic, we have said, as part of our decision-making process, that we will not, as a government, encourage the use of any vaccine that is not approved by the World Health Organization, because that is the platinum standards. That is the most significant body giving professional advice on issues of public health. And so you have a lot of names, maybe you have close to 200 vaccines at different stages, but they did not have the support of the WHO, only about 5 until now. And so we have said any that we will use must be something approved by the World Health Organization. Again, we have not used any big stick. We haven't used any small stick. We basically have been encouraging. We have been given the carrot. We are seeing people in different contexts and in different countries looking at different forms of incentive and considering all options. In Antigua, we see some supermarkets in the private sector giving, for example, a discount if you are vaccinated. And those things are being driven by people who have an interest really in seeing their country normalize and understand that some people will respond to that kind of incentivization. I saw tonight something being circulated where there's a partnership between Anguilla and another country, another island, Nevis, where again you can get some benefits if you are to be vaccinated. And these things have emerged as part of the response to the vaccine hesitancy and as part of the responsible way to get people where they must go.
Thank you so much for that.
And again, to make the point, though, that in the years in which vaccines have been here, particularly going back to childhood days, really we were just told, you're going to the health center today. No question asked, no objection. Not one of us have died from it. So we have history of success in our choice and use of vaccines that are safe. And that is one of the things that must guide us. Now, measles and mumps, you hardly see anyone with them. They are more the exception. Because so many of us here on the panel, Comrie and I, Mr. Brandy before us, you perhaps after us, Dolly and the Major, all of us would have gone through that, and we know really that there is some good in it.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Prime Minister. And on this program, I know that we take all the calls and all the questions, and persons might not always agree with everything, but as much as we'd like to hear from you, let me use this opportunity to caution callers against making unsubstantiated and spurious claims. So that's very important to note. We're going to take our final calls, and then we'll go to the WhatsApp messages. So, caller, welcome to Leadership Matters. You're live.
Hi, good evening to the panel.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Prime Minister. The question I have is not really for the Prime Minister. It's a question I would like to put out there. If Dr. Douglas was the Prime Minister today, wouldn't he have ordered the vaccine and encouraged people to take the vaccine? That's a question I would like to put out there. And Mr. Prime Minister, I would like to encourage you to continue doing what you're doing, because if you wasn't doing what you're doing now, you would have been criticizing for doing the same thing. So continue doing what you're doing, because I know you have the country in your best interest. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your contribution, caller. We'll take another call. Welcome to Leadership Matters. You're live.
Yes, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Yeah, well, I think the Prime Minister answered one of my questions that I posed earlier about ruling with a big stick in terms of the vaccine. I believe he elaborated clearly on that. Anyway, I have two other questions. Was one about the judicial system. Some time back, he mentioned that they was going to make an attempt to clean up the judicial system, like the backlog of cases and stuff like that. I wonder why it takes so long for a case to be disposed of in the Federation, if he can talk on that. And also the dilapidated houses inside Bass State that they said they was going to try to get cleaned up. Those two questions I want to at least get answered. And also, I'll probably revise one of my earlier questions and maybe ask him, with the people that's pushing the anti-vaccine campaign, is he concerned about that campaign getting any steam and hurting the Team Unity government by any chance? And that's all I want to find out for now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much for your question. Do we have any additional calls? Okay, that would be our final call for this evening. And I have your questions here noted. What I try to do is take the calls as they come in, because our callers are very important and we try to minimize the amount of time they're kept waiting. So as we go along, we take the calls, but I've definitely made a note of your questions, and I want to thank you so much for ensuring that they get answered. So we can go back to the questions and try and finish up the questions we have, and then we can get to the WhatsApp messages. We have a caller who asked how many officers, soldiers, immigration officers, and persons in the Ministry of National Security have been vaccinated. Gentlemen and lady?
Yes, I think we are roughly around 55% of our officers have been vaccinated so far.
Vaccination status stand about 50%, and we're hoping to meet our target by 1st June, which is 70%.
We are at about 85%. We're
When
close
I checked
to 85.
last Friday, my office was at 90%.
Let me say, for the government of a whole, we have started that exercise of tabulating, and therefore one would be in a better position to get this information, which is important information, because really this is a pandemic of global consequence, and every nation has to be moving. I would want to use the opportunity, though, to commend the efforts of the security agencies and their leaders. The most outstanding so far, going by the number, would be Madam Hughes, who have gotten at least 85%, and by tomorrow 90%. I am certain with the help of Jackie and Jeffers and all the other persons. I want to commend the front line, the police. We have 55%, so we have another 15% to be added within a few days. And of course, the Defense Force, we all must get there and get there critically soon. One of the lessons we learn as we look at it, and people have to be mindful, is what happened in St. Vincent and the Grenadines recently in light of the eruption. And I raise that issue because it's a challenge as we approach the hurricane season. And one of the considerations was who will get into the centers, the shelters in St. Vincent. The government stipulated that anyone to get in really had to be vaccinated. And of course there was a health concern there, because if you're having people in these crowded situations, which in the context of the movement of somewhat 20,000 people, 16 or so thousand, Dolly, what was the figure, had to be relocated? About 16. Then you could see what the consequences could be if just one person entered the shelter who was affected, the ripple effect that that could have had. And so it really is an imperative. It really is very important that people look at all of the dynamics and get themselves vaccinated as soon as possible, because you do not know when a situation could develop from which you find yourself at a disadvantage. We do not know. I would say do not wait, for example, until something serious happens and you have to travel and you learn that you need to be vaccinated to get to the particular destination. Do it now, because then it could be too late. Do not wait until you find yourself in a situation where you have to be around people and you are not sure who has the virus and who doesn't. Again, it is in your self-interest to get your 2 doses and ensure that you are fully vaccinated, which minimizes the chance of you transmitting, or if you contract it, certainly according to the science so far, you should not get seriously ill, and it will prevent you from dying as a result of contracting it. So that is where we are at. But beyond that, one of the good things is that we have over 40%, 41 going on 42% of the target population already vaccinated in the short of about 10 weeks. This is very good showing, and one of the best showing in the region over this comparative time frame. When we look at where, for example, America is, where the UK is, where Canada is, and each of them would have started their vaccination rollout earlier than us. America since December, some of those other countries earlier in the new year. We started at the end of February, and we are further along in terms of getting our people there. So I'm encouraged by that. Ultimately, people do the right thing. People understand what they have to do and do what they must in their own self-interest. And quite a number of people who, some of them are engaged in discouraging others. They already went and take their vaccine. So it is an interesting scene to see played out, because they know it is really the right thing to do, and they have gone and done it. But they have done it in secret. And so, as it were, they then do not share that they already have. It is unfortunate, but we are moving ahead, and certainly, we are getting there. We still have a distance, but we are getting there, and we are encouraged by the success of the rollout. We're in another couple of weeks. We will get to 50, which is a significant milestone, and then further on that part. What is also helpful is that we are seeing very good responses in relation to persons taking their second dose. We already, I think by last count, we have had over 1,000 persons who have already moved forward and had their second dose. And so these are good signs that the public is listening, at least some significant number of them, and they are doing their best in pursuing the health advice. So I want to commend all of those persons. We have delivered over 14,000, administered over 14,000 doses and over 1,000 plus. In the short time when we started, the second phase, which would have been last Tuesday it was, or Monday, Mr. Brandy? We started the exercise Tuesday. Then we have already have over 1,000 people. So that is significant development.
We have the questions from the caller who reminded us to address them about the judicial system and what steps are being taken to clear the backlog.
In relation to the judicial system, I must remind everyone that the judiciary is an independent branch of the government, and that by and large, in the context of St. Kitts and Nevis, they get direction and, of course, support from the Chief Justice in St. Lucia. What the government has done is to put as much resources as we can to ensure the efficiency of the turnaround in relation to matters at the court. We provide the resources. For example, we undertook to pay for a third judge, and at one point in St. Kitts we had 2 Justice Ward and I think Justice Ventos plus 1 in Nevis. So for the first time we had at least three judges available in the jurisdiction of St. Kitts and Nevis, and we had undertaken to meet all the expenses related thereto. That was one way of having a quick turnaround. My understanding was that at the High Court they had done such a remarkable job. From having the 3, they were able to deal with the criminal matters separate and apart from the civil matters, and Mr. Brandy perhaps could speak more about that. And that had led to great efficiency in terms of turnover with respect to the court. But there are other matters impacting upon the delivery. For example, how quickly will the judge can hear the matter, but how quickly the judgment comes. And we have had, in our case, some cases where judges leave the jurisdiction and they have pending matters. And that in itself takes time. Because you have to wait for them to conclude their decision-making, write their judgment, and submit it appropriately. So there are several factors beyond the capacity of the government to intervene, which may mitigate against people getting their quick justice, which we still believe that they ought to get. We are going to be moving to do further digitalization of all processes of government, including at the judiciary. We are contemplating having what we call night courts to be able to deal with certain matters more expeditiously. And all those other things that we are doing, really, we have spent some time and we are developing mediation centers, the capacity for people to resolve their disputes before the court without having to wait a long period, because a lot of times we are advised that through the process of mediation, people can arrive at their justice too, and some persons have taken that particular route. So it is a work in process and in progress. In relation to the dilapidated houses, that is a matter that is of concern to us. Indeed, one of the programs in which some of our at-risk young people who had become part of the alternative pathway had been engaged in Basseterre had been addressing that challenge in cleaning and clearing some of these abandoned homes. They have a number of issues in relation to them, and some of it is that, well, they are private property, and how far does the state go in getting itself involved with private property? Do you acquire them? And do you want to acquire every abandoned property in the city and elsewhere? So we are having some consultation and some outreach and some documentation with respect to these properties. Some of them I'm almost certain that given their location, the government may have an interest in buying to put for public purposes. And so this matter is one which a committee should be engaged so that we could have the kind of thinking through and the kind of intellectual work that would lead to good outcomes. And so the government continued to be dealing with this matter, and I'm sure in the not too distant future we will be able to deal with it.
Mr. Commissioner, I know that abandoned properties are included in some of the operations of the police. Anything you'd like to add to that?
Yes, I wish to say that our officers normally take serious attention when it comes to abandoned property in and around Bastia or anywhere in the country where criminals normally tend to hide drugs or firearms. And quite often we use our dogs to conduct searches in those abandoned houses. And up to last month, a firearm was recovered in an abandoned house at Market Street.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Commissioner. We have it came in the form of it was a suggestion in the form of a question, Mr. Prime Minister, about considering using cards from the electoral office to replace the vaccine cards that are currently being issued.
At the last cabinet meeting, that matter of the type of vaccination evidence one would have or should have was discussed. The Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Laws, has some idea which her professional team is looking at, and also looking at the experiences of other countries, looking at the capability to have these in a digitalized form, in a manner of speaking, so you can upload on your phone and you can walk with that, and other more tangible forms in which you could have the evidence with you. So that is actively under consideration, and I am hoping that very shortly we will be able to come to the country and to say, well, this is what we have opted for. In the meantime, though, every person who gets vaccinated has a card which outlines clearly the date on which they were vaccinated, the type of vaccine that they have, and all the other relevant particulars. And of course, in designing and developing this, we have to adhere to international best practices in relation to them. 1 or 2 countries have gone on to develop what they call the vaccination passport. Israel, that has done a very good job in its own vaccination rollout, has done some collaboration with a number of countries in the European Union. And so we have at least some examples of what potentially can be, and it is for our own local experts here to finalize where we will go and to make the recommendation to the Cabinet. But the discussion is being undertaken as we speak.
We will take a break at this moment, and when we come back, we'll answer the remaining questions we have from callers, as well as address the WhatsApp questions that we have. So it's going to be the final leg of the program. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
St. Kitts and Nevis, let's roll up to roll out. It's our best shot.
I will take the vaccine because building defenses against COVID-19 is a team effort, and we are all a key part of that defense.
I definitely will be taking the vaccine when it's my turn.
I will be taking the vaccine as it is an important tool in the fight against the pandemic.
It is important for me to vaccinate to ensure that if I do become infected with the disease, it can prevent hospitalization. In addition, it also helps with herd immunity.
I will take the vaccine to protect myself, my loved ones, my clients, my co-workers, my community.
St. Kitts and Nevis, why do we need to vaccinate? Kenisha? So we can jab COVID-19 away.
Welcome back to Leadership Matters. This is the final leg of our program, and we're going to use it to try and address the remaining concerns we've gotten and questions and statements and queries. So this program is hosted by the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris, and it's a focus on a safer, secure, and more secure future. He's joined by key officials in the Ministry of National Security. Of course, there are others, but the ones here with him tonight are the National Security Advisor in the Ministry of National Security, Major General Retired Stuart Saunders, the Commissioner of Police, Hilroy Brandy, Lieutenant Colonel J. Anthony Comrie from the St. Kitts and Nevis Defense Force and Coast Guard, and the Chief Immigration Officer, Marceline Hughes. We had a few more questions from, two more questions from callers, and the first one I'm going to put is to the Prime Minister. We have a caller who asked for an update on step workers and their situation.
Well, that again is an ongoing work. What I can do is to ensure as we use another edition of this particular leadership forum to address STEP and other personnel related matters. For now, we are on to security. That continues, as I said, in relation to the STEP to be a work in progress. The major challenge, though, is that we have 3,000 plus persons on the STEP program scattered across, if you will, public sector and private sector. We had determined that we wanted to treat with all of them simultaneously in terms of their regularization. That required that an audit be conducted. The audit in the public sector, by and large, is satisfactorily completed to the best of my recollection. The audit of the private sector is taking a bit more time because I guess there are a number of small entities from farmers, fisher folks, small shops, big shops, perhaps involved in it. And so persons have to go physically find the workers, ascertain that the information being provided is reliable, and so on and so on. Particularly when it comes to the farming community, that of course is a little bit more challenging because you have to physically go on farms, find people there, and at times that has proven to be very difficult to do the coordination. And so on a future edition of the program, I will be in a better position to give advice as to where we are at and how we are going to conclude that process.
And finally, for the callers, we had a question about if you are concerned that the anti-vaccine campaign would interfere with your administration's efforts.
Well, the anti-vaccination program has been a significant cause of the vaccine hesitancy, not just in St. Kitts and Nevis, in Antigua, everywhere across the world. And in fact, the public health agencies like PAHO, like CARPHA, have begun to put out a number of information regarding the propaganda in relation to those discouraging persons from taking the vaccine and attempting to cut across the noise, the myths, etc. So the short answer, yes, any effort to sabotage the vaccination rollout, whether for political or other reasons, certainly will not be helpful to the national agenda, which is to achieve herd immunity. But it's not unique to St. Kitts and Nevis. That doesn't make it right. But it is not unique. It's a global phenomenon that we are dealing with, and we are seeking and engaging others as to what is the most effective response to that particular dilemma.
Okay, we go now to the WhatsApp messages. We have a statement here. It's not necessarily a question, but the person is saying some persons who are traveling on the public bus and some bars and restaurants, they have observed that customers and passengers are not wearing their masks, and are saying that you need to let the police fine persons for not wearing their masks in public. This one says, good night. There is a serious matter which I want the immigration officer to look into, with Hispanic persons going around and picking up illiterate men and women from the country and marrying them off to get their passports. I would like the office to check it out. And she said it was done to her cousin, and she was paid a small sum of money. So her question is it illegal to do that? Sure.
Well, I'll attempt to say that it is something that we do not have the laws in place for that. Marriage of convenience or sham marriages, there's some countries that have the laws spelled out, and you can go and do your investigations and take the matter before the court. So these are some of the things that we're looking at in terms of the Immigration Act to be reviewed, and for amendments to the Immigration Act. Those are some of the recommendations that we wish to make, so that when these situations occur, that we will have teeth, we will have the grounds to stand on to investigate. And that is why we are pursuing this unit that we speak to, so that this will be a part of their mandate when we get the Act amended to be able to deal with such matters. But I would like to encourage persons, as Mr. Rock would have said earlier, that as part of our intelligence gathering, we will find persons or locate persons like Mr. Rock himself to see if we can recruit him as one of our informants.
We have a question, Mr. Prime Minister, saying that you are doing a good job with getting citizens vaccinated, and the person wants to know if it can be considered for persons who are allergic to the PEG in the vaccines, and also persons who have medical conditions and cannot take the vaccines, if they can take a PCR test, and if the test is negative, if they can be allowed to see CPL cricket and go to other sporting events.
I think the rule with respect to the CPL, we have to understand again, we cannot tempt fate. We have to remind people that it only takes one miss to get us back into a lockdown. And that is why the health experts, having looked at the situation, said that as we begin to build out our way back to near normal in terms of societal normalcy, people going to events of recreation and so on, we have to do it in a phased way and learn from that experience. It can't be a free-for-all. And so the first start will be those who are vaccinated, that you, as it were, has less risk, and therefore one could be able to do more. I think it was on this particular forum that Dr. Cameron Wilkerson and Dr. Laws both opined that it would not be appropriate in any event for persons, and I hope I'm quoting them correctly, who have underlying medical condition to find themselves in crowded areas. So anyway, they are a large group, especially of unknown persons, that person better look at the games on TV rather than wanting to go there. Again, is to minimize your own exposure to have the virus being transmitted to you. And then with your health condition, you could have the worst effect of it. And so it is in one interest, again, to minimize crowded areas, especially with unknown participants in that space.
This question is for Ms. Hughes, and the person is saying, just an observation, the response time to persons requesting permission is not fast enough, and because of this feedback, persons have reported that it is causing them to miss their flights. Can any improvement be made in this process?
The online form is being reviewed as we speak, but one of the things that we observe is that some passengers wait until they receive their PCR result to begin the process of application. The application can start at any time because it's, as I say, it's three components. You have immigration, customs, health. And you can fill in the immigration and the customs. You can upload your information in the immigration and custom sections. And 72 hours before you travel, you can go ahead and upload the PCR in the health section. But some persons get the PCRs back late, and then they go and they try to do everything one time. We get calls all over the night. People just got back the PCR and they're in the line at the airline. I mean, we don't sleep. So what I would encourage persons to do, the only section on the online form that is time specific is the section that deals with the PCR, which must be no more than 72 hours. All right? And so even if you would have already completed the immigration section, the customs section, when you have to now go, and instead of being in a haste and can't get it done, because that again, people get so discombobulated, you just go ahead and begin the process. So when you get that PCR, you edit the form and you put it there. So sometimes immigration, we already approve applications for people up to August this year. Some persons would have already submitted that aspect of it, and we already did our approval. But there are many reasons that something similar can happen. But the form is a work in progress, and we are reviewing quite a bit of changes that we wish to make it a lot more user-friendly as well.
Thank you so much for that. We have a question. This one is for the Commissioner. The CCTV cameras, how often are they maintained? And they want to know if this is done by the police or a private company.
CCTV are maintained on a regular basis, and they are maintained by our staff at the telecommunication department.
This question is also for you, sir. Why doesn't the police use drug and gun dogs randomly at traffic stops?
I said earlier, we are still using our drugs and gun dog, not only in abandoned houses, but also at traffic stop. If you visit 4th Street and the ferry terminal, maybe on a Friday, when you have most persons in town, you will see the presence of our dogs.
I believe is for the Prime Minister, the host of the program. Someone wants to know why the head of the prison is not represented on the program tonight.
Well, it's a good question. I want to thank the caller for being so observant. Clearly, part of it has been the time management. We are already beyond 10 o'clock, which is our schedule end. So imagine if we had more panelists with more questions and more opening statements. We'll probably go up to 1, which will be well beyond your bedtime. So we try to manage it, and to say that this was not particular to the prison, where we attempted to bring some of the units And the prison play a critical role, Mark, in the containment of crime, in protection of persons from those who have run foul of the law. So it's a critical agency. So it's not that it's being minimized. We have here the defense, the police, the immigration, and so on, which in a more direct way is dealing with some critical aspect of the law enforcement agenda. The main reason, though, is one of management of the program, and it would have been too much and too large a panel group. And also in the context of the environment in which we are at, we don't want to create any overcrowded situation. You see how we are here. We are good here. We are all, well, most of us, fully vaccinated. I could speak for Mr. Brandy. I could speak for myself. I could speak for Mr. Cumry. I want to speak for Dolly, but she has already had her first shot. And I know you have had your first shot, and the NSA, but we all have had our dose. So, again, question of logistics, question of management, question of ZIZ own space, restricted the number of persons that we could have had at this particular edition. That doesn't deny that in the next forum, and you can help as one of the moderators, we can have the Commissioner of Prisons, Mr. James, and there are significant matters regarding the administration of the prisons, which we would want to, in the era of transparency, to bring and to have the public engaged. There are interesting issues about parole, for example, quote unquote, the role of visiting justices, etc., which should be the subject of public conversations from time to time. And so I think there's an important role. But also observe that tonight we didn't have the fire chief. For a similar reason, the panel could only properly be of a certain size given the time and given some of the issues. We do not have Abdias here in his capacity as director of NEMA, which is also an important agency in the context of the safety and security. Not the drug abuse. So again, we have another set of enforcement agencies which can be part, and we could have a subsequent panel engage in those, because I'm sure that people will find that also to be a very interesting panel. And so we are open. Thanks for the observation. We will correct that at a later stage by having representatives from these other agencies of national security and a panel.
And our final question this evening asks, why after being vaccinated, one still has to quarantine for such a long period?
It would be best if the health practitioners answer, but the general understanding, though, in the context of St. Kitts and Nevis, if one is fully vaccinated, we have already reduced substantially the time frame of quarantine from 14 to 9 days. Again, this is a very dynamic and evolving situation. And what we have done is to ascertain the level of risk. And the science again reveals, as I understand it, that the 9-day window is an appropriate window by which, if there are signs that one has the COVID-19 disease, that would reflect itself. So after 9 days and you are tested and you're negative, then it is good. There have been instances where persons who, on paper or otherwise, and we have to bear in mind also that there have been cases where persons have brought documents which are not the real authentic documents, not necessarily here, but it has happened in other jurisdictions. And so the mere fact that somebody could upload evidence of being vaccinated, just as, for example, in a more simpler form, people can bring forward certificates. And we have had, in our case, had to, as part of the free movement, had to go back and do verification because something seemed off in relation to them. So too with any document. that is part now of the reality of life in which we live. So, long and short, we are doing our very best. The time frame for the quarantine will be revisited from time to time. We have gone from 14 to 9. Who knows what the next reduction will lead us to? And again, we don't want to chance fate. One of the trouble you could have if one person slipped through, and again, it only needs one. You could overwhelm your health system. And the evidence everywhere, whenever the health system is overwhelmed, people will die. And that has now borne itself out everywhere. In the USA, you saw what happened in the United Kingdom, in India now. You know, it is that they don't even have oxygen. The health system is under pressure. And that is why India turned out having one of the highest death rates over the last couple of weeks since the 12-month period in which we have had the pandemic. So we still need to move cautiously. So we in St. Kitts and Nevis, we have adopted a precautionary principle. If there is any reason for doubt, we must adopt the life-saving strategy. So more than anything else, we want to save lives. And if it means that people will have to quarantine for an extra day, we are prepared to do so, because we really do not want to have a single death as a consequence of this. And we've been perhaps unique in some ways with the level of success we've been able to show to the world. We want to follow the science, and as the science tells us more, it is still relatively young in terms of a disease that is going on for a year, and so you are learning more information. You're learning more information about who can and who can't, etc., take the vaccine. So we are being abiding by that advice.
I want to thank you all for taking the time to address the calls and concerns and listen to the suggestions made by the persons who participated in this evening's program. And we have gotten to the point where we now have to wrap up. Yes, we're at the end of the show. Thank you so much for making it what it was. We will have closing statements in the reverse order of which we began. So, Ms. Hughes, Chief Immigration Officer of the St. Kitts and Nevis Immigration Department, you are now up first.
Well, let me just say again to thank the Prime Minister, the Honorable Prime Minister, for inviting me to be a part of this panel this evening. It is usually a joy to be able to come and share with the nation what we're doing at the Immigration Department. We will actually be celebrating our first birthday on the 1st of July, our third birthday, sorry, on the 3rd of July. And so we already start putting plans in place. I'm thankful for my support team, Ms. Brown, my deputy, and my senior supervisor, Mr. Jeffers. I mean, they're a source of such great encouragement and always there to to give me the support that I need. And there are others on the management team. I just want to thank all of them for the hard work that they're doing. I want to congratulate the immigration officers who have stepped forward to recognize that we are frontline officers and that it's important that they take the vaccine so that because they interact with very high-risk people on a daily basis. So I'm thankful for that. And as the Prime Minister said, it's a work in progress, and hopefully we will have 100% vaccination in the very near future. I would want to again encourage our citizens to be the eyes and the ears of the nation, help us to keep our borders safe and secured. We know that persons want to come here, desperately need to, and they're going to find means and ways of coming in. If they cannot come through the legal ports, they're going to try and come in illegally. And so we ask you to be observant and to report any suspicious activity whatsoever so that we can keep our country safe and we can keep this virus at bay. So again, thank you, and Honorable Prime Minister, it was a joy and a pleasure to be here with you and the other security chiefs. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Roslyn Hughes, Chief Immigration Officer at the St. Kitts and Nevis Immigration Department. Commander Comrie?
I would like to join my fellow partners in thanking the Prime Minister for inviting us to the Leadership Matters program this evening. Protecting our borders from illegal movement of weapons, drug, contraband, and people while promoting lawful trade and travel is essential to the Federation's security, economic prosperity, and national sovereignty. Hence, we at the Defense Force is cognizant of this and will continue to work hard in protecting our borders. Thank you.
That was the commander of the St. Kitts and Nevis Defense Force and Coast Guard, Lieutenant Colonel J. Anthony Comrie. Commissioner Brandy?
President, good evening again. I want to thank the Prime Minister for inviting me so we can share our information in terms of our effort in crime fighting. I want to thank my staff, the members of the Royal St. Kitts and Nevis Police Force. I want to thank the Traffic Department, Beat and Patrol, Outstation, CID, and all the units of the Royal St. Kitts and Nevis Police Force for the continued support, and not only support towards the High Command, but also to our citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis. For the citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis, we thank you for your information that you share with us, and those who are yet to come on board, we're looking forward for you to come on board so we can make St. Kitts and Nevis one of the safest places on earth to live, work, and to do business. Thank you again, Mr. Prime Minister.
Thank you so much, Commissioner of Police Hilroy Brandy from the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force. Major General Saunders.
Thank you, Prime Minister, and I also thank the members of the panel here for the support that we have had over time. I wish to point out to the public in general that national security is the business of everyone. We do have some way to go as far as fully establishing the national security architecture is concerned. We do have a lot of work still to do with our at-risk groups, but we can accomplish everything working together. Thank you.
That was the National Security Advisor in the Ministry of National Security, Major General Retired Stuart Saunders. And finally, from the host of the program, the person who brings you the program every week, Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris. Mr. Prime Minister.
Hearty thank you to you for so successfully moderating another edition of Leadership Matters. And a hearty thank you to each of the panelists. I think each one did himself, and in the case of Mrs. Hughes, did herself proud. And the nation can feel comforted that the leadership of our national security agencies, the leadership is in good hands. Working together, a lot has been accomplished. We have traveled quite a very far journey, and yet there are many more miles to come. I recall in 2015 the heightened sense of anxiety in the country at the particular moment in time. I recall that on election day in 2015, we had shooting in Connery, close to one of the polling division. I recall that on the 22nd of February, when the full cabinet had been sworn in then at Warner Park, we had just about 9 homicides on record. We were leading up to almost 52 homicides for that year, if we were to extrapolate what was then. So the country was really at a dark place. It had become known then as the murder capital of the world. Today we can sleep more peacefully. And I had been the minister and have been the Minister of National Security from 2015. It had been a most agonizing moment. The first couple of years, where almost every night there was some incident in Bastille or somewhere else. We must never go back to those dark days. We did our very best. We invested in law enforcement in the country, in every area. That is why we have a forensic lab in Tabernacle, which, according to the report of the Commissioner Brandy, is doing a fantastic job in helping to solve crime. We did what we could to assist with the morale. We incentivized where we could. We reorganized the police force with advice from the Brands Hill advisors who had come in and developed the directorate. We, as it were, brought the immigration department under its own leadership and watch, and broke the glass ceiling with the appointment of the first female head of that particular department. We were able to have had advice and the experience of a fellow CARICOM national in Major General Saunders, to whom we are indebted as a seasoned hand in all levels of law enforcement in Jamaica, heading their own defense operation, moving to become a permanent Secretary of National Security and an advisor to successive governments, all that wealth of experience. And he's also, or was, probably still is, a lecturer in the security program at UWI. All that wealth of experience and connection he has brought to assist us. And at this moment, there is relatively calm in the country. What I do know is that we could never take life for granted, and we therefore will not take the successes that we have had so far for granted. We have to continue to work, to build out, to be diligent, to be watchful, and always be aware that we are the best security that we have. We have to be our brother's keeper in this regard, and so the continuing encouragement, you see something that has gone wrong, please say something to the police and to help. It was the reluctance of persons to give evidence that made it necessary for us to employ the technology and market the technology. It's wonderful in terms of the CCTV. They are used internationally. And we have spent a huge sum. Tonight I mentioned that for Nevis alone, is $5 million being pumped into the CCTV system on the island of Nevis. And we are continuing to expand that and to enhance that. We have determined again to ensure better retention in terms of the monitoring, that Mr. Brandy will increase the wages of those who are there in that center. I'm not sure whether he will subtract some of his allowance to make that a reality. But we are going to do some adjustment in that particular area and continue to do the good work. I gather that there are additional areas in terms of the forensic lab in which we are going, and I was heartened, I think it's tonight, Mr. Brandy mentioned that our forensic lab has been in service to other countries in the Caribbean region who have sent on to us, and I gather we are making some additions there at the facility to allow additional services to be provided there, so that we will put ourselves in a stronger and safer position. I was heartened by some of the comments we have had, the introduction of the compliance unit, it's called, Mrs. Hughes? Enforcement unit, that would help us to do better monitoring of those who come in and to ensure that we really are doing what should be done in relation to protecting our borders from unauthorized entry and unauthorized stay in the country as part of the agenda of keeping us safe. So tonight has been quite a lot of information has been shared. Tonight, I have learned more details about what is happening. I want to end in commending again the number of persons, and at some point we'll have them introduce themselves, who at a moment of critical challenge came forward. A guidance counselor, a banker, some persons in the high command of the police force, the NSA, and brought together what became popularized as a peace initiative in St. Kitts and Nevis, which has contributed. It has not been the only reason, but it certainly has contributed to the climate of peace and security in our land. And of course, the enhanced professionalism and the evidence-based fighting strategies that have been employed. One Juve morning I recall, and I will end on that note, because we need more people when things are going well to commend those who are making good things happen. A lady from East Bastia came forward and said, Mr. Prime Minister, I want to say to you, you're doing a good job. People talking a lot of things about this peace initiative, but don't let it stop. She said, don't let it stop. She said, I will tell you this. I lost a son, and up to this day, I haven't gotten over it as a result of this gang violence. Do not let it stop, because I do not want another mother to grieve the way I grieve. My heart welled up. She has suffered, and yet she had the compassion and the sensitivity to know that this program was important.